All right. I wanted to talk a little bit today about the Book of Boba Fett. We are 3 episodes in, and I've written about the first two, and then the third one came out, and I guess I just had to think about it for a little bit longer before I wrote anything or made a video about it because I couldn't put my finger on it. I think it's not that I couldn't put my finger. There's just too many places to put my fingers. There was so much wrong with this episode, which isn't to say it was all bad, but it wasn't very good, and it rubbed me the wrong way, especially after episode 2, which I thought was fantastic. Let's just go through some of the problems, not just with this episode, but with the show. With the show, we'll start with the sort of bigger broad stroke stuff. This feels like poor man's Mandalorian, doesn't it? Right? Like, Mandalorian was its own thing. It really did its own thing right from the gate, right? And not just because of Baby Yoda. Obviously, Baby Yoda added so much depth and humor and adorableness and, a MacGuffin that was useful to the plot. Mandalorian had so much style and verve, and Mando himself was such a... I don't know. Mando feels more like Boba Fett than Boba Fett does in the Book of Boba Fett, if that makes any sense. Mando feels like this strong silent type who just sits in the corner and then kicks some ass. Boba Fett's always talking. He's never wearing his helmet. Like the Boba Fett from the original trilogy that we barely, he's not a very big character, but he's got that distinct style, and he's a strong silent type. That's Mando. Boba Fett in the new Boba Fett show is like, yeah, blah, 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 and not mysterious. Sorry, I was holding this coffee for a while. I had to take a sip. He's not mysterious. He's not interesting. He's fine. He's a very likable granddad. But is a likable granddad really the character you're looking for in a whole spin-off show? I also, let's get to the granddad thing in a second here, and I'm not trying to be ageist, but I'm being realistic. Boba Fett's a bounty hunter, right? Like, that's what really draws us in. And again, we get that with The Mandalorian a lot. He's out getting bounties, taking names, kicking ass. In the Book of Boba Fett, he's trying to take over as daimyo in Jabba the Hutt's his territory, Mos Espa and the surrounding region. That I like the idea of a crime war, between these factions, but I'm not sure that Boba Fett is the right vehicle for it. I don't think he's the right character, because what we wanted out of Boba Fett was more of like a badass bounty hunter. And even if he wasn't bounty hunting, kind of like the guy that goes in and breaks down doors and just, kills Bib Fortuna right off the bat. That was, I think, more what people were expecting. What's that movie with Mel Gibson, Payback? maybe a story that goes on like a revenge story would have been a nice vehicle for Boba Fett. Maybe he has some bones to pick and he goes out and I'm not saying it has to be ultra violent. I've seen people say it should be the Punisher and it should be no, Star Wars, even before Disney, was never a place for ultra violence. These are generally aimed at children and grown-ups who like stuff for children like me. Boba Fett's age is a problem. No offense to Tamira Morrison, who I hope I'm not butchering his name. Boba Fett in The Return of the Jedi would have been about 36 years old, just according to timeline stuff. If you look at the Clone Wars and the prequels, when he was a child to the timeline, when Luke Skywalker would have been in his 20s, he was around 10. So yeah, he would have been in his mid to late 30s in Return of the Jedi, and this is only several years later, right? This isn't like Boba Fett in this show. It feels like it should be taking place during the sequel trilogy, because he's old. I don't know how old the actor is. I should probably look that up. Let me look that up. I'm gonna look it up right now. Tamira from New Zealand. He's 61 years old. He is about 20 years too old for the timeline. Isn't that kind of weird? I like the actor, and I like how he portrays Grandpa Boba Fett. But we're talking about somebody who would be like my age, like early 40s. Boba Fett would be like me, and he'd be in really good shape, unlike me. And instead we get a 60-something-year-old man who's in great shape for his age. But, you know, the Boba Fett who falls in the Sarlacc pit in Return of the Jedi is like, you know, a good 20, 30 pounds lighter than the one who crawls back out. And that is a problem for like believability and immersion. The fact that he also is like calmed down and like pretty chill about everything. Like he is, you know, he wants to rule with respect, not fear. And he, you know, almost everything he's handling very diplomatically. That is a problem because, yeah, that makes sense if you're kind of an older, wiser guy. But here's a guy who just got out of the pit and then apparently watched this whole tribe of Tusken Raiders who kind of welcomed him in get slaughtered. Like this, he would be a youngish, and angry, and probably pretty violent dude. It just, none of it clicks. None of it clicks. It feels like it's not as good as The Mandalorian, but also that Boba Fett is less like Boba Fett than Mando is, age-wise. I mean, honestly, like Pedro Pascal is more like the age of Boba Fett. That's how old he should be. I think he's in his early 40s. That's how old Boba Fett should be in this show. Other stuff specific to episode 3. I know people are pissed off about those little hover bike things. They look straight out of Back to the Future 2, right? Like, I mean, they're cool, and I want one, and I want to drive around on one. But their aesthetic is so not Star Wars. It's really bizarrely not Star Wars. I think the prequel movies, unfortunately, had a lot of little things that didn't feel like Star Wars-y. And in a lot of ways, the sequels did a better job just aesthetically, I think. And movies like Rogue One were aesthetically on point. These bikes just feel like you're walking through a bakery and suddenly there's like giant lollipops instead of loaves of bread. It's just really this jarring image. When they should have been more like, you know, all the other speeder bikes we've seen, but maybe with like a little flair or something. I get it. Young people like flair, whatever. More troubling than that to me is the Hutts just giving up. Like, what? Like, even if this is a head fake and the Hutts are just playing like this game and Game of Thrones-y type thing, okay, but even that's just, it's not a great or satisfying head fake. They showed up in one scene, and the next time they show up, they're like, okay, never mind, bye. And in the meantime, they sent Chrysanthemum, the wicked Wookiee of the West, in to kill Boba Fett, but we don't see how he gets into his stronghold. And then it's like this fight with these newcomers that Yellow Jackets chick and like all these young punks that Boba Fett hired because he has no army and no soldiers, so he had to hire a bunch of street thugs. Like, what a waste of a really cool character. Like, he shows up, and again, instead of like hiring him because he needs muscle, instead he just lets him go. This seems like a very strange decision for Boba Fett, again, to just not only show weakness, but instead of like playing to his strengths, which is like incorporating, like he did with the Gamorreans, incorporating them into his forces, he just sends the Wookiee away when he could have hired him, or as the Hutt suggested, sell him back to the gladiator pits or whatever. Waste of good and interesting villains, the Hutts and Chrysanthemum, in favor of the Pike Collective, which is this, you know, intergalactic crime ring that apparently is working with this weird mayor who is more tied into all of this than he let on, apparently. I like the Pike Collective is not a very, I mean, they're fine, but I'm much more interested in these twin Hutts and this evil Wookiee. Like, that's interesting, and the Pike Collective is just kind of blah, whatever. So I watched the 3rd episode, and I just sort of felt like, damn, this is really letting me down. Like, there was this great build-up last episode with the Hutts showing up, with the Wookiee showing up, yeah, they established some stuff with the Pike Collective, but they also showed how the Tuskens and Boba Fett sort of kicked their asses pretty quickly, even being outgunned and with less technology. So now it's like, okay, cool, I guess. We're going to have a war against the Pike Collective, who really don't need to become the daimyo of this area. They operate on such scale that it's probably the path of least resistance is just to like get along with the local crime people instead of having to run things. But whatever, I don't know. Maybe there's this, three-dimensional chess going on, and the Hutts are pulling some strings with their flabby little arms, and maybe the Wookiee will be back. I don't know. It just feels. It feels like we had the first episode was like, okay, this is all right. We'll see. Second episode was really good and like an exciting episode. Third episode, not so good again. And it just raised all these questions with me, like Boba Fett's age and everything else. So I don't know. I think that maybe going straight from Mandalorian to this, it invited too much comparison and so far unflatteringly. Whereas maybe if they had gone straight to one of the other Star Wars shows, like off of Tatooine, so not even like the Obi-Wan show, but like the Ahsoka show or something, some other Star Wars show in between these might have been a good idea. But maybe it'll get better. Maybe this was a bad episode. I don't know how they get away from some of the things like the age or like Boba Fett's weird like gentle grandpa nature, but we'll see. Let me know what you think about Boba Fett, the Book of Boba Fett, down in the comments. There's also this little notification bell, and like, subscribe, share with your friends, whatever. Thank you for watching. Peace.